Nikola Tesla explains that if you want to find the truth behind the universe, you must look at frequency, energy, and vibration. And when all these three combine, you create something called movement. Now imagine if a movement derived energy from the right sources, and collectively humans exchange this right and positive energy and move towards a progressive direction. I believe that India has stopped moving. I believe India needs a movement to take its people forward into the future. While we are surrounded by stories about economic growth, investment, development, I believe India as a nation is declining when it comes to its human factors. As I said, India has stopped moving. Today in this country, you have 2 million abandoned children, billions of women being oppressed. Opportunities are scarce. People still don't have food to eat. People are depressed. One of the biggest dangers, as Nikola Tesla further explains, is one of the biggest retarding factors of movement is human ignorance. I further add, it's also illusion. Today we live in an illusion of virtual reality where we think change is liking something on Facebook, retweeting, or shouting on prime time. And when has that ever created any change in this country? I further believe that conventional forms of protest, politics, and theoretical approach to impact has met its expiry date. Today we need something more real. Now, you would wonder, why are protests no longer relevant? Think about it. You live in a society where everybody wants some form of benefit. Everybody wants to gain something. No one is willing to concede. So if you go and protest to the government, they are not going to concede. If you go and protest to businesses, they are not going to concede to stop earning profit, right? So in today's age, a movement has to be something that is of collective and mutual interest, which is why a protest will be nothing but a fight of ego. In the end, children will still be hungry, forests will still be chopped off, and water will still be scarce. Politics. I think the very construct of India's politics has to change because the very nature of the voter has changed. I think in 10 years from now, you will not vote based on caste, but you will vote based on climate change. You will not vote based on God, but you will vote based on who is delivering good governance. Theoretical approach. Often we read in various papers, right, left, socialist, capitalist. I think the time has come for us to reimagine theory and reimagine how to govern this nation beyond the realms, beyond the traps of old school information that is in fact restricting our ability to innovate the way we create change. The root cause of all the problems we face today, whether it is climate change, whether it is overpopulation, and of course overpopulation is because of human behavior that we cannot control ourselves. So I believe that human behavior is the root cause of every problem that society faces today. We often ignore that because we often again use theories and politics and other forms of explanations of why things are going wrong, but remember that the entire universe as we know it today is constructed by humans, and therefore human behavior, human movement therefore decides the course of which way humanity progresses or regresses. What is the solution? Behavior change. Now, the interesting bit is that behavior of millennials today is often influenced by an information system. We are trapped, as I like to use the word, by triggers of information that are shaping the way we think and act, whether it is our choice to not like a religion, whether it is our choice to only think about a religion and ignoring people that supersede religion, or if it is about voting a particular kind of leader. This is all triggered by information that we receive from various different sources. While there is a TED, there is also right-wing websites that influence people, and that's the reason why we see a very strict narrative today that is actually crippling our growth and stopping us from moving forward. Now, in order to change human behavior, you have to change the way and change the very information that they consume. There is a science that can be applied to understanding how this information creates electrodes or electric impulses in our minds and eventually shaping our decisions. So if we are able to understand the link between information and how it is processed, then we are able to alter human behavior. So I have been working on creating a model, and this is something that is still work in progress, of how do you influence human behavior in the age of technology to nudge millions of people to make certain choices and actions that would take them forward. Let's look at people. In my behavior change model, the first step is to accept why people behave in a certain way and why they make certain choices. Once you accept without bias and judgment, you're able to get into the crux of the matter. Then, because of technology, you're also further able to break it down into different kinds of people. So the first step in building a movement is to use the power of tactical messaging and big data to deliver the right nudges to the relevant people. If I were to ask all of you to do something, one thing, you wouldn't do it. But if I asked you to do the same thing in a different way based on who you are and how you think, you are more likely to do it, especially if I attach positive fear and incentive. So the first step in building a movement is to create tactical messaging, micro-target the message based on the relevant mindset, and attach it with positive fear and incentive. A very, very dark example, but whether you and I may disagree with ISIS, it still has millions of followers. It is still a movement. And therefore, clearly, there is some formula that the people at ISIS applied, or there is some formula that the voters of Trump were subjected to that they voted for him. So clearly, there is something there. And the same thing can be used to get people to make some more progressive choices. The second part is government. Now, government or public institutions are very powerful and cannot be ignored in their role they play in society. Now, the reason I said that you should not protest because it's no longer valid or relevant is because rather than making the government your enemy, what if you bring them on your side? So, to create a movement, one is you activate and excite the people, and then you excite the government to enable the people to take that behavior change. And I'm going to take you through an example subsequently. The third thing is businesses. You cannot expect businesses to not make profit in today's time. I mean, this conference exists because there is profit, right? Otherwise, nobody is going to sponsor on goodwill. So, in a modern age, to build a movement, you also have to take care of the interest of businesses and their profitability. I think that if you are able to effectively target the people, get the government on your side, and get the businesses interested in fueling the movement by showing them their profit, what you're doing is activating a collective conscious of all the key stakeholders in the ecosystem that we live in today in order to build a movement that actually creates some form of tangible change. Imagine if in this diagram, instead of everybody together, everybody was fighting, as usually happens today. I mean, today, I'm going to take a very quick example of a place in China where there is this billionaire, Dhanin Chevernot. He went to China to open a factory that manufactured toothbrushes, but he wanted to use robots instead of humans for obvious reasons. But instead of getting into the conventional fight that we know about in certain similar scenarios, he actually went and partnered with the farmers who owned the land where he wanted to build the factory by telling them, why don't you become my partners in the factory, let the robots manufacture, that will increase the supply, increase profit, and you get enhanced dividend and a primary income from your land without farming while you actually go and get a second income. Today, all the farmers agreed, the business is thriving, farmers have two sources of income, and everyone's happy. What's wrong in that? That is the only way you can build a movement in today's times where there is some form of actual impact created. There are so many movements in the last 3 years that were great on social media, that brought governments down. But what really happened? Nothing. In the end, I repeat, children are still hungry, children are still abandoned, women are still suffering, water and resources are still scarce, right? I'm going to quickly take you through an example of a movement that we are building called Adopt India, based on the same principles. Now, in our country of 1.2 billion people, there are only 1,600 something orphans who can be adopted because of various policy blocks and various issues on the part of the government, even though in reality you have 2 million plus abandoned children. And you have millions of urban young couples who actually could be great parents if they adopted rather than what I would say produce and bring more people into this world. But it's not so simple, right? So a conventional movement would be a child rights movement or a human rights movement would go and protest with the government as to why aren't you changing the adoption policy, or on social media you put some videos of poor naked hungry children and say give me a home. And that's what typically happens, but nobody ends up adopting because children are not being adopted. People would rather financially adopt them if they saw some sympathy-seeking communication versus actually giving them a home. But if you want to create a movement that creates actual systemic change, what you do is, the first step, messaging. So people don't adopt for various reasons, right? For some religion, for some apprehensions, for some they want to see their own blood, bums and eyes. That's why they want their own children. So what you do is you create awareness by using tactical messaging, where, for example, do you know that Bhagavad Gita exists because someone fostered Krishna? So actually adoption is in the very culture of India. Prophet Muhammad was also fostered. Jesus is the gray area, so I'm not going to speak about it. So what we do with awareness when it comes to adoption is we talk about how actually religion has endorsed adoption to shut all those grandmothers who say this is not holy and I will not let you adopt. And that's one big reason why millennials don't adopt. And then those who are environmentally conscious, we create messaging about how many liters of water there is in this country and how many mouths. And the more increasing number of mouths, decreasing number of water. But there are already so many children in this country, why bring more? So what we do is we create such kind of messaging, use big data to micro-target based on understanding who is consuming the information and excite them about the idea of adoption and create some positive fear incentive of adopting. We don't say adopt because of sympathy, we say adopt because of strategy, because of why it should appeal to you to make strategic sense of why you should adopt a kid. The second thing is we also create awareness amongst other key stakeholders in society who will influence millennials to actually go ahead and adopt. So for example, very soon you're going to see pundits and Maulvis talking about why you should adopt, and that will change the game, right? Because religion unfortunately controls the discourse of this country. The second is action. No behavior change or movement is complete without enabling action. Today the problem is there's a lot of communication and awareness, but people cannot actually change their behavior. So what are we doing? We're actually working with the government to use technologies like blockchain to speeden up the process of what it takes for a government to process a form for a parent to adopt. Because one reason why people don't also adopt is it takes 2 years to get a kid. So we actually work on that, because if you can get a pizza in 30 minutes, you should at least get a kid in 6 months. And so while we are doing that, on the other end, we are also building a mobile app actually. Like just like on Amazon, you can go and buy goodies. You can go on our mobile app and actually apply to get a kid, and we'll actually work with you through the process so that it's easy. So that's action, because any communication without enabling of action is gas, right? And that's the narrative we are living in today, where we have lots of ye India, wo India, but nothing's actually happening. The last step is advocacy, where I said we will create mutual benefit, right? So while you excite the people to adopt, you make it easy for the government. So if you go and tell the government, okay, I'm giving you a solution, they'll take it. That's a good thing about this government. The third thing is you also show the government why it is in their interest to enable adoption, because remember, our Prime Minister loves going across the world, right? So India suffers a lot with the Human Rights Index. So if the Prime Minister's office opened up a policy to get 2 million abandoned children a home, Nobel Prize is kind of guaranteed. So you actually excite the government and show them their incentive. Or businesses, we're actually going to companies and showing how the employee happiness quotient will increase if they incentivize their employees to adopt, and how a business's brand will increase. So for example, we're also talking to a funder to fund this campaign, and an insurance company to become the world's first adopt-friendly insurance company. So that's a great business benefit for the brand to also support a campaign like adoption, right? So this is a very small sneak peek into how one needs to let go of biases, let go of this desire to stop mutual benefit, and we need to reimagine how impact is created in this country, because as Rumi says, somewhere between right and wrong there is a field. I think movements can only happen there. Thank you.